A midlife crisis is more than just a cultural stereotype. It's a real psychological struggle that can surface between the ages of 40 and 60. Often triggered by aging, loss, or unmet expectations, it can actually lead individuals to question their identity, make impulsive choices, or abruptly abandon long term commitments. While not officially classified yet as a mental illness, the emotional and relational fallout is very real, especially for the spouses and families left behind. This podcast gives voice to those living through the aftermath, exposing the hidden pain, and seeking accountability, healing, and understanding. Thank you for joining us today on MLC Bomb Drop and Beyond. The stories and events discussed in this podcast are for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or professional advice. Any names, locations, or identifying details have been changed to protect privacy. Any similarities to actual persons, living or dead, or real events are purely coincidental. The information presented on this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice. Always consult with a qualified expert regarding any decisions related to your specific situation. The views expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the podcast creators. All right. Hello, everybody. Today we have Sarah joining us, who is going to tell us her experience and story concerning her bomb drop and midlife crisis and how it affected her. What's going on? All right. Hi, Sarah. Good morning.
Good morning.
And I'll just say this is not your real name. This is the name you've chosen for today. So, all right. So, well, should we start with how long had you been married? Are you still married?
We can start with how long I was married. We were married 29 years.
Oh.
Known each other since we were about 8 years old. Um, have always been friends. He his parents divorced when he was 8, and so he moved away. When he came back when he was about 17, we met again, and he was interested in me then, wanted to date me then, but I wasn't interested. And then he ended up marrying one of my good friends, and they got married in '89. And I got married in '90 to somebody else, and then my marriage didn't last my first marriage didn't last long. Um, and then his wife, uh, had an affair, and they divorced in, I believe, '94, and then that's where we started seeing each other. We started seeing each other, I believe, in, like, October, November of '94, and, then we married in '95. And, we were good friends, very good friends, so it just like a natural fit for both of us. Um, Before we got married, there was a bombing here in the city I live in, and it was a federal building that was bombed, and he's a firefighter. When I married him, he was a firefighter, and so he was, helped in the rescue and recovery work down there. And before we married, I remember thinking, "He's not the same. Something's wrong with him." And I just believe he had post-traumatic stress disorder from all that he saw down there. Um, and then, our marriage really, once we got married, um, we had a good marriage. It was easy. Like, there was no transitioning for me. A lot of times it's like getting used to each other. There was nothing like that for me. We got along so well, had so much in common. Um, if anybody was going to be difficult, it was me. I was the one who was, moody, hot tempered, just could be just very difficult. Sometimes I just did it on purpose, and he was always so even keel in his temper. He was just so mild and meek, and honestly, I can say he was near perfect as a husband. He was near perfect. He always showed the utmost respect for people. He was just very empathetic, very kind, very compassionate person, and he was in his job as a firefighter, he was very, well respected, and he just climbed the ranks of the fire department, quickly. Um, and I will say he was very conflict avoidant now looking back. He was conflict avoidant. not really knowing any of those things, until this happened to me. Now I realize he was conflict avoidant. He was very needy. He needed constant validation. But, in 2020, he retired from the fire department, and, he seemed like he just took that really well. Like, there was no signs to me that, he was having issues. Um, but then in 2017, his mom went into a nursing home, and then she moved in with his family, his other sisters, and they helped with her. And, there sort of maybe being a little few signs of him kind of struggling with his mom, issues with his mom, unresolved childhood issues. And I really believe like his job at the fire department, that was his identity. And so once he retired, it kind of came more to the surface of his having identity issues with really he did well with retiring, but he also kind of struggled with who he was. But in 2023, he befriended some young some young kids that we mentored. There were some young couples, and it became obvious to me that one of those young couples, the girl, uh, she was married. She was 23, and it became quickly obvious to me that he started. It was uncomfortable. Their relationship was uncomfortable for me. And then in 2024, January of 2024, we went on a ski trip. And on that ski trip, we had a lot of friends with us, and they called my husband out and said, "We're not comfortable with your relationship with her. It's making us all uncomfortable." And I felt the same way.
Was that couple, the couple you were mentoring, was that lady on the ski trip?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
yes. And it's interesting because her and my husband were very compatible. She was a nurse. My husband was paramedic, firefighter. He has curly hair. She has curly hair. He loves golden retrievers. She loves golden retrievers. He loves Colorado. She loves Colorado. Very empathetic people. And when I did address him before we ever went on the trip, I was just like, what do you see in these young kids? I don't understand. We're in our mid 50s, late 50s, and they're in their early 20s. What do you see there with them? And he was like, they're just positive, fun people. And I'm too old just to sit on the couch and do nothing. And they're fun and exciting. And, um, and then her in particular, the young girl in particular, when I would single him out, like, your and her relationship does not make me comfortable. It's something I can't put my finger on it." And he would say, "We just get each other. We just get each other." And I'm like, "Okay." So try not to like really read anything into it until we went on our ski trip. And I was feeling very unsettled because we were teaching these young ones how to ski, and she caught on very quickly, very quickly. And my nieces and nephews were there as well, and they think my husband hung the moon. They love him. My youngest sister, everyone just loved my husband. Like I was the villain, and he was the saint, is how it was in our family. Um, and my sister was like, "Something's not right with him, something's just not right. He's not normal." He went off on my sister's husband, and I didn't see it, and I was just like, "Well, I don't know what to say." But then later it came to my attention that he had been addressed about people being uncomfortable with his relationship with this girl. And so he responded very out of character, just got super emotional, called a meeting with everybody, super emotional before everyone, was like, "She's like my daughter." She was emotional, like, how dare anybody think this? She has a victim mentality, and she's very smart, very precocious. Um, she's always the victim in situations. But looking back now, I see lots of red flags with her. Um, So anyway, we came home from our ski trip, and this was at the end of January of 2024. His mother died February the 11th. So we weren't even home from our ski trip for a week when his mother died. And we were there with her when she passed away. And then his sisters, which is a whole nother issue, family dynamics, unresolved childhood issues, and the dysfunction that was there with the family. They wanted him to do his mom's memorial service. And so he started, going back through his mom's past and getting information ready for this memorial talk. And I told my mom, I said, I just see like all these unresolved childhood issues coming to the surface. This concerns me. And people at the memorial service, he broke down during the talk. Hundreds of people were there, and people were like, he's not normal. And I'm like, well, his mom just died, his mom just died. So, and not trying to divulge people's, dynamics in their family, just like, his mom died, and maybe there's just some unresolved things that's going on with him that he wish he could have said to his mom. During the memorial service, we were told that his closest friend was in the hospital. He had had a massive heart attack. And 2 weeks later, he died. And so they asked for him to do, they asked for my husband to do his memorial service. And my husband said, I can't, I just cannot. In the meantime, my nephew's gotten engaged and asked my husband to perform his wedding ceremony. And so my husband agreed, which that was another thing where I saw some things that were not kind of out of characteristic from my husband. He was telling me, "Your family's so negative," because we just didn't want my nephew to get married. Um, and that's a whole nother story. But he was like, "Your family's just extremely negative, and you, why can't you just be happy?" And um, was telling me then, if you can't get yourself in a positive mindset, I can't stay with you. And I was like, "What? Like, where's this coming from?" And, he would tell me, "I feel like we're just roommates." And I was like, "We are not roommates." We had a good relationship. We had there was nothing missing in our relationship. Um, we were very active people. We hiked, we snow skied, we water skied. We took month-long camping trips to all the national parks, just him and I, and it was wonderful. We had a wonderful time. Um, so these things that he would say, he started accusing me of something really bizarre in 2023. He started accusing me of something that was so bizarre. And I was just like, I am not doing that. I don't know why you're saying I'm doing that, but I am not doing that. Looking back now, I believe he was experiencing some erectile dysfunction, and he was probably projecting just feelings onto me. And I didn't really realize it, but looking back now, I do. I see those things now. Um, so, but yeah, so after on March 27th is when everything flipped in my life. March 27th of 2024. I was dealing with him about this young girl. I was telling him, I'm not comfortable with it. I can't put my finger on it. But somehow you and her always manage to be together. You always manage to be where she's at or she's where you're at. And it makes me uncomfortable. And he literally flipped, did a 180 on me. He told me, I can't live with you anymore. I've got to have peace. I need clarity. I don't have peace with you. You're toxic. You're a liar. I mean, just the list went on. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? I'm like, yeah, yeah. I mean, 29 years of being, well, at this time, we weren't married 29 years. We were a few months shy of that. But I was like, you've never told me these things, why are you coming at me now? And I did everything, begged and pleaded. So he didn't even sleep with me that night, because he was accusing me of started in accusing me again of what he had been accusing me of for a while. And I said, "I'll just sleep in the other room so that you can have your space." And he was like, "Oh, sure, that's sure you will, sure you'll do that." And that way you can just do what you wanna do. And I was like, "That's not no." I mean, I got so angry that, I mean, I screamed so loud, I just busted blood vessels in my mouth and my face because I was just like, "I cannot keep doing this. I don't know what I'm doing, but I cannot keep doing
Are you
this, you know,
serious
cannot
that you
do not."
can scream so loud that you busted blood
Yeah,
vessels? Is that a thing?
yeah. I was just like,
Wow.
"I'm not doing this." I
Right.
just screamed
You're
so loud like
so
that.
like yeah, yeah. Wow.
My frustration level was just off the charts, and I
Wow.
felt like he always had this thing, like, when somebody if he confronted somebody about something and they would then start accusing him of something, he would say, "They're shifting the blame. They're shifting." And I said, "That's what you're doing here. You're shifting. You're shifting everything onto me, and I don't understand why you're doing that." But that night, I didn't sleep with him. I got up the next morning to go to work, and he was still asleep, so I didn't disturb him. But I tried to the next when I got off work, I was trying to message him, text message him, and he wouldn't respond. I was calling, he wouldn't answer. And I mean, this went on for several hours. And the next day, we were leaving to go for my nephew's wedding. And so I was just like, "Can you please answer me?" And he's like, "I'm thinking, I'm driving and thinking." And I'm like, "Okay, I just need to know you're okay." And so when then on Friday, March 29th, we left and went for my nephew's wedding, and he did not speak. My mom and dad were with us, and he did not speak. Um, he was just if you asked him a question, he would respond, but he was so distant and so disconnected, and I
Shut down.
just remember yes, yeah, and, he had a wonderful relationship with my dad, and all of his parents except for his mother had we took care of his step parents, his real parents, um, but yeah, so at the wedding, I just was like, I don't know what's happening to my marriage. My marriage, I feel like it's at a crossroads. And I was, trying to speak to him in our hotel room, trying to speak to him and just shut down, disconnected, nothing, just nothing. And real emotional during my nephew's wedding ceremony. Um, then we drove home. He did not speak to me or my family the whole way home. He would just get up and leave. If I tried to have a conversation with him when we got home, he would get up and leave and be gone for hours. All through the night, he would be gone, and I'd be trying to, text him and call him, and he wouldn't answer, he wouldn't respond. And finally, I would just say, "I'm going to call the police if you do not answer me. I need to know you're okay." And then finally, he would, respond, "I'm trying to get peace and clarity in my life, You need I can't have it with you in my life." And I was just like, I've never heard him use that word clarity before. I never heard him use that word. So I was like, "Who's Clarity? I would like to meet Clarity." I'm like, "Who is this Clarity? I'd like to meet her." And um, I was point blank asking him, "Are you having an affair?" And he was like, "No, it's you. It's just you. I can't stand you." And then the bomb dropped. "I don't love you anymore. I love you. I care about you, but I'm not in love with you." And I was just like, "What? What are you talking about? Oh, you love me. I know you love me." I said, "You just gave me a card that talked about how much you love me. You gave me flowers. And I said, "What about this 25th wedding anniversary poem you wrote to me?" And he was like, because he told me he had been faking it. He's been faking for 5 years. He's been faking it. His love for me, he's been faking it. I'm like, "I don't believe that. I don't believe it. I do not believe it." His eyes became hollow. He was like in a trance. He When I would talk to him, he would cock his head like he was processing, like he was trying to understand what I was saying. It was just like an alien had taken over. And
Wait, did he do this? Did he do any of this leaning his head back? Like talking like that where you can't even see
yes,
their eyes?
yes, yes,
And
numerous times. Yes,
so
yes.
crazy.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny because I really didn't say much to my family because I was just like, this is this is not going to happen. We're not going to separate. Where he's not going to leave me. And I would tell him, I will let me when he retired, he wanted me to quit working. I said, "Well, I'm not gonna quit working, but I'm gonna go down to just, part-time." So I was working very part-time. So I told him, "Let me find me a job and I will leave." and then you can have some peace and clarity in your life. Since I'm the reason for you not having peace and clarity, I will leave." And I thought he would fight for me. I thought he would say, "No, no, no, don't do that. I want you to stay," but he didn't. He did not do that. In fact, at one point, he would do the weirdest things. He would go down to our pond. We lived on 5 acres, and he would go down to our pond, and he would just lay down there in our pond. He had built a big, like, dock, and he would just lay at the pond just for hours, just lying down there. Or he would lay on our concrete driveway. Just I have pictures of him just lying in the middle of the driveway. And I'm like, "What? This is so bizarre." Like, who does that? You know? And all the while, he was keeping contact with that young girl and her husband. We have an NBA basketball team here, and he was going to games with them. And I would say, "Oh, am I? So we're going to this game?" And he was like, "Not you. You weren't invited." And I'm like, "Well, why wouldn't I be invited? Like, I've always went to the games with you." He was like, "Did you get a text message? Then you're not invited." And I'm like, "Okay, wow, this is so weird." Like, and I mean, I begged and pleaded and cried my eyes out, just cried and cried and cried. And he was the most empathetic person. And I'm not a crier. I don't cry easily. I'm tough. I am just one tough person. But I've never cried so much in my life. And he would be like, "Why are you crying?" I'm like, "You just told me you don't love me." And he would be like, "Oh my God." And just turn around and walk off. And I was like, "Who are you? I don't know you. You are a person I recognize who I'm looking at, but I don't recognize the behavior or the personality any longer." And at one point when he was down at the pond, I had came home from my parents' house, and I had told him my sister was going on an international vacation, her and her husband, for about a month. And I said, "I'll go stay at my sister's house for a month. And that way you can process and get clarity and peace." And I said, "But, I have to pray about this before I do it. I have to seek some direction before I do this because we're very religious people, very spiritual people." And so when I went to my parents' house, at this time, they did know some of what was happening. And my dad said, "You absolutely will not leave. You are going to go back there. Your place is with your husband. He's got to figure this out. He needs some therapy or something, but you do not leave." He's like, "If you leave, he can claim abandonment on you, and you're not going to do that." And so I didn't really know the laws of where I live, never faced I mean, I've been through a divorce before, but it was just a quickie divorce. But anyway, so when I came back, he was like, "So what's your plan?" I'm thinking he's talking to me about for the next day, and I'm telling him my plan for the next day, and he goes, "No, no. Are you gonna leave or not?" And I was just thinking, "Oh my God, he's so callous." And I said, "No, I'm not." I said, I've prayed about it. I've got some direction, and I'm staying. My place is here." He was so mad, and he had a temper, but it never showed. He was very in control person, but he got so angry at me, and I was just like, "I'm sorry, I can't. I'm not leaving." I love you. I want to work on our marriage, and I'm committed to work on our marriage. And I just begged and pleaded. Just I would be like, I know you love me," and he was like, "I don't love you anymore. I did, but I don't anymore." And I would be like, "God can help us." And he was like, "God doesn't force anybody to love someone. He doesn't force them." And I was just like, "Oh my gosh, who is this person?" And he left and went to see his family for a week. And when he left, he told me, "I'm going to go see my brother-in-law. I just need some space." And this is right around the eclipse. April 8th was the eclipse in 2024. And Dallas was a good place to see it. And so I was like, "Are you gonna go see the eclipse?" And he said, "I am." I said, "Well, can I come with you?" And he was and before, he never went anywhere without me. If I said, "I can't make that trip to go see your family," he would be like, "Well, then I don't wanna go." And I would be like, "It's your family. You're fine. Go see your family without me. You're okay." And he was like, "No, no, it's not the same without you." But this time, he was like, "No, I don't want you to go." And I'm like, "Okay, so will you contact me? Can I call you?" And he was like, "No, I don't want you to call me." And I was like, Okay, will you let me know you made it okay? Will you contact me from time to time?" He said, I'll keep in touch." The whole time he was gone, and now in the meantime, I've contacted one of his sisters. He has, 3 sisters, and the one sister I'm pretty close to, and I called her and said, "This is what's going on. He says he doesn't love me, he's gotta leave me," and she was like, "No way. No." She was, "We know how he feels about you. He is crazy about you. We all know that in this family." She goes, "Do you think he's having a midlife crisis?" And I go, "Is that even real? Is that even a real thing?" You know? And, um, and let me back up. The day that he just did a 180 on me when I confronted him about that young girl, one of my friends had said, "Do you think your husband's having a midlife crisis?" And I was like, Why are you asking me that?" She goes, "My husband went through a midlife crisis." And she goes, He's showing all the signs of a midlife crisis." And I was like, "I don't even know if that's a real thing. I think that's a joke." And she was like, "No, it's real. It's absolutely real." And so that was my first 2 times of really hearing about a midlife crisis. Never really looked at it, never looked into it. Instead, I checked myself into therapy. While he was gone, I found text messages between him and his family. He had left his watch, which is a smartwatch. He left his watch at the house, and I looked at it, and I saw text messages between him and his family, and they were telling him, to leave me. I'm toxic. That he's always got a place to come and stay there. So I was just like, "Oh my gosh, I'm a toxic person. I didn't know this, but I'm toxic. I need help." So I tell him, I'm going to get help. I've checked myself into therapy, and I'm like, "Please don't leave me. Give me an opportunity to change." And he was just like, "I'm just going to sit back and watch and see if you change. We're just going to see." And I felt like I was just being like scrutinized just constantly by him. If I at all got any way elevated in my tone, he would be like, "All right, I'm done. I'm done. I'm out of here." And then I'd be like, "Oh, please, please, please don't leave me. Please don't leave. I'm sorry." Just just that was a constant cycle from um probably April, all of April. All of April was just a nightmare. Just me trying to figure out how to make this relationship work. When I checked myself into therapy, my therapist was like, "Has your husband had any type of um, like loss or went through some kind of change? Like, has he retired?" And I'm like, "Yeah, he retired in 2020." I said, "But he seemed fine." I said, "But his mom died." And she was like, "Yeah." I said, "And his best friend died a few weeks later." She's like, "Yeah. I think your husband's experiencing midlife crisis." And I said, "This is so bizarre. I've never even, is that real? I don't believe it's real." She said, "It's absolutely real and it's very serious." And then my mom, when I went to my mom's house after my first therapy session, my mom was like, "I found some information I think you might want to look at." And she was asking me, "Does he have a brain tumor? Does he need to go be checked?" His personality is so different. I mean, he cut off everybody, everybody. He wouldn't have anything to do with my nieces and nephews, whom he adored. And our friends, they were like, "Is he okay? Like, he's not normal. He doesn't talk normal. He's angry. He's aggressive." And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." And they're like, we noticed it when his mom died, at our place of worship, people would come up to me, because I just a basket case. I'm like, and that's not my nature. I am like very confident, very in control. I'm very outspoken, I'm very loud, but I was just like a shell. I lost 20 pounds in like a couple of days. I was just panic attacks, full on panic attacks. And when I would go to our place of worship, people were used to seeing him and I together. He wouldn't sit with me, he wouldn't hold my hand. And I would just be like crying, just like, just not able to get myself together, and people were seeing it, and he would tell me, "When you act that way, people think it's me." I'm like, "Well, it kinda is you. It kinda is." And just telling me he couldn't trust me, that I was a liar, a manipulator, a bully. I bullied his mom just like I bullied him, and he feels guilty that he never took up for his mother. And I'm like, "What? I have taken care of your mother since 2004, and this was But I've taken care of her all that time. I've taken care of all of his parents, all of them. Not one time I ever told I was a bully. They were like, "You get things done, you're in control, and you know how to get things done," but never once was I told I was a bully. I've been told I'm intimidating, but never a bully. S I was so in hopes that he could, his family would talk to him and help him. Instead, it had the opposite. His family flipped on me. They were like, "You just need to leave him alone. He needs clarity." And I was just like, "You guys keep using this word clarity. I don't think that word means what you think it means." But, um, so he extended his stay. He was gonna only be gone for a few days, but he stayed longer. And rather than calling me, he sends me this long text about how abusive I am. I'm very abusive. My anger, and he can't handle it anymore. And he does love me, and he's trying to figure out what's best moving forward, but he would not be home until I think 4 days later. So when he finally came home, I was so excited, so excited. I mean, barely spoke to him while he was gone. So happy he was coming home. And when he came home, he was just a block of ice. I just ran up and hugged him, and he was just a block of ice. And I said, "So you don't love me anymore? You still don't love me?" And he was like, "No, no." And I was just like, "Okay." Like, I don't know what else to do. I don't know. And so then the next day he wanted to go have dinner with this young girl and her husband, and he was normal to them, but not to me. I mean, he barely spoke to me. I was trying to hold his hand, which we always held hands. And this restaurant we went to, they all knew us because we frequented this restaurant. And they all themselves, when I went back, they asked me, I had went to the bathroom and they were like, "Is everything okay?" And I'm like, "Why?" And they're like, "Hey, something's not right." Even people we didn't really know, but, saw us on a regular basis could see a difference in him. And then, but from there, that was like, probably the first week of April, he just never, I could see him struggling, trying to figure it out, trying to process what was going on with him and it was like he was in this fog, like he just could not process anything. Um, April the 2nd was the last time he ever told me he loved me. I had left. We had had a conversation, and it was just such a frustrating conversation, and I left, and I was just gonna go take a walk, and he called me, and he said, "I love you. I just want you to know I love you." And that's the last time he ever told me that. From there, it was, "Yeah, I don't love you anymore. I don't wanna kiss you, no affection." And he was the most affectionate, loving, hands-on person. It was none of that. When I would try to hug him, he was just like, just go stiff. And when I was like, "Can I kiss you goodbye?" 'Cause that was always a thing for him. He would always like, his job was being a firefighter for 30 years. He was just like, "You never know when this is gonna be your last time to see someone." So we always kiss each other bye and tell each other we love each other. He stopped that. He stopped eating with me, stopped talking to me, stopped hugging me, stopped kissing me, all that. It just stopped. Just it was like we were complete strangers. And so, May 16th, the mental and emotional abuse for me had become so bad. I was almost suicidal. I was just like, I can't do this." So he had uh, went to some basketball games with this young couple, and an older couple that I know that we're close with had went, and they were like, "Yes." They're like, "Why weren't you at the basketball game?" And I'm like, "Well, I wasn't invited." And they're like, "You're married. Why do you have to be invited to go with your husband?" And I'm like, "You need to ask him that, you know?" And so they were like, "Yeah, well, we noticed like him and this young girl, they're so weird. Like he would get up to go to get a drink and she would follow after him and they would be gone for like 20 minutes." And they did this like 2 or 3 times. And the last time her husband finally went down and got her. And I was like, "Oh, you mean he's figuring it out, that something's weird there?" I had had text messages with her to please back off, like something was not right my husband if she could just please back off from him. And, she would, come at me, "You are disrespecting me. Um, you're reprimanding me." And I'm like, "I am older than your mother. I If I'm reprimanding you, I have every right to reprimand you." And talk about disrespect. No, you're disrespecting me, my marriage, and your marriage, and your reputation, and my husband's reputation. I'm
And
like,
she's disrespecting her husband.
yes. Yeah, and so she would tell me, "Oh, he knows. My husband knows that we text." I'm like, "Well, I don't how can he be okay with that?" Like, I have never been the type of person just to be like, "I'm just gonna text my friend who's a guy just by himself." The way that looks, it's, like, secretive, and why can't you text in a group? Because we had a group chat between her husband, my husband, and us 2, so why can't we all be included in that? And then I found selfies. I found selfies of her lying in her bed with my husband's fire department shirt on that he had given to her husband. He said he was giving it to her husband, but it had his name on there. And she takes a picture of herself lying in her bed with his shirt on, and it says, "Peep the PJs," you know. And and then I saw other selfies of her to him, and he's saying to her, "Guess what I'm going to do?" And he says, "I'm gonna go lie down by my pond in my hammock. Guess what's missing?" And she says, "Me holding your beer," with pictures of her. Those are all innocent. When I confronted them, they were all innocent. Then I come across his WhatsApp. Oh, I'm like become a finder outer. I was like, I'm getting on the computer. I'm gonna find out what's going on, where he's at. He would be gone all day long. He would get up at like 10 o'clock, leave the house, and not come home till maybe 3 in the afternoon. Then he would leave again and be gone till like 11:30. And, I just, like, never knew where he was at. So I just started, like, getting on our not my laptop, our desktop computers upstairs. I would go up and start getting on the computer upstairs. Our financial information was always out in the wide open, so I could always access it. But I was getting on the computer and I saw his WhatsApp information, and he was sending videos of him singing to her in his tractor, singing, like, a country song, and we don't even listen to country music. We don't listen to country. We never have listened to country. And he's singing a country song to her. And then he's sending a video of him playing the drums. And I was like, he's never done that. Never did that to me, ever sent me a video of him doing anything like that. And then one time when they were over, she's telling me that about my husband's bucket list, that she was going to get us tickets to go to a concert in Red Rock, Colorado, because that was on my husband's bucket list. And I'm like, he has a bucket list? I've been married to him for 28 years and I never heard of his bucket list. And yeah, he changed the way he dressed. He started dressing Western. My husband was always very modern. He used dressing Western, cowboy boots, a big buckle. Found out when he went to Dallas in April, he bought him a cowboy hat. I'm like, that is not even you. But yeah, so just started when my mom told me about the information for midlife crisis. When I looked it up, I was like, holy cow, this is my husband. I mean, like, checked every single box. I've looked at Larry Bellata's information, the wife expert. There was another website. I've researched, like, endlessly researching, and you should just have my husband's picture right there. It's him. Everything, all the precursors, everything. He's got it. And so I started really trying hard to work on how I responded to him, not asking questions, just being kind of aloof to things. When he would come in, I would just be like, "Oh, hey," not ask him anything like, "Where you been?" Um, he's a very visual person, always. Like when I took a shower, if I got out of the shower, he was always like very sexual, and that was gone. Like nothing, nothing. It was like I was just non-existent. It was so strange, and I finally just said, "Can you quit coming in here when I take a shower? It's makes me very uncomfortable. I feel like I'm, like you're a complete stranger, and it's just this is very uncomfortable for me." And, so, yeah, just
Let me back up. You said that because you at that point, you really felt like he was so different.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was not.
The best friend that you'd been with for, like, 27, 28, 29 years
Yeah,
was not there.
yeah. The only way he would respond to me about anything, if I would ask a question, like, "So what are we doing?" "What can I have a check-in with you? Like, can you tell me what you're thinking about my behaviors?" Nothing. Just no response. Or if I would just ask a question like and here's the other thing. He was such a hard worker. He took care of our 5 acres. If there was something broken, he was on it to fix it. He quit mowing. We have a pool. Um, he didn't open the pool. I mowed. I couldn't ask him how to do anything because he wouldn't respond. The only way he would respond to a question is if I asked him about this dog. He got a dog, I think, like, April 23rd. He went and got him a dog, and, he tells me he gets a female golden retriever, and this young girl has a golden retriever, and he says, "I want my dog to mate with her dog." And I'm like, "Well, sure you do. Why wouldn't you?" You know? Sure. And here's something that really solidified to me that there was truly an emotional affair, at the very least, an emotional affair. He was acting very out of character, and this is before he flipped out on me. This is probably it was not long after his mom died, I know. We were making the bed together, and I was just like, "Are you okay?" I said, "I know your mom just passed away, but something just doesn't seem right." And he goes, "I just feel like I've suffered a death because I can't have my relationship with this young girl." And I go, "Okay, duly noted." That just solidified everything I needed to know. And, stuff like that just stings. It's like, wow, wow, how callous to me to think how that would hurt me. But, yeah, that's all that sort of stuff has came back on me now. He's lied about what was said in that conversation. Um, it's like everything that was could make him look bad, he has lied and tried to twist it to make me look bad. He went to my brother-in-law, and he was close to my brother-in-law, told my brother-in-law, "I want to explain to you why I'm doing what I'm doing, why I'm leaving her." And he was scared of me. I'm violent. I strangled his sisters. He had to pull me off of his sisters. Never happened. Never happened. His sister and his niece attacked me, and he never did a thing about it, ever. I mean, attacked me in our home because they didn't like some way I treated
And
my
did
husband.
that really happen?
Yeah, him and his sister and his niece, they literally attacked me in my home, and he
Like,
sat and watched.
physically?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They had me down on my couch. Just I had scratches. I have pictures of scratches just all over me. And my neighbor, who lived across the street, came over at the time and saw it all happening. And she said she turned around and walked off because she was like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" And she later called me to check on me. And she was like, "Are you okay?" She goes, "I saw his sister and his niece attacking you." She was like, "At first, I thought you guys were playing, and then I realized it was serious." And she was like, "Are you okay?"
Oh my god. Wait, what month did this happen? Was this after, after
No, that happened at the beginning of our marriage.
Oh, wait, why
Yeah,
would they do that?
because they didn't like the way I responded to him about something.
Oh,
They
huh.
didn't like the way I spoke to him, and they
And then that was just a one-off in the early days of marriage, that never and
yes,
then you
yeah.
had a normal relationship with his sisters and his
Yeah,
niece.
my relationship with his sisters was tricky. He was the only brother, the baby brother,
Oh, okay.
and he had a different dad than they had, and they hated his dad, and, they thought My husband could do no wrong. I mean, literally, they would ask questions when I was sitting right there. "Are you happy? Is she treating you good?" And I'm like, "Hello, I'm right here. I can hear what you're asking." You know? They would bring him buy him expensive suits, and they would give me paper napkins with roosters on them. Yeah, yeah. Now, as our relationship went on,
Okay,
they
let me
were
go back to that. No, I mean, that's really bizarre behavior for some other women to come into your home and physically assault you. You're newly married, and I mean, um, and he didn't do anything,
no, no.
and he's your husband,
Yeah,
and
and
he
I
let
said
they
yeah,
they literally hit you.
yeah, 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 I have pictures of scratches and bruises all over me.
Oh my god. Okay, Sarah, that looking back, do you feel like, wow, man, that was a sort of interestingly weird red flag?
Honestly, I knew it then. I would question him, like, "Why did you never defend me on that?
Yeah.
I don't understand, you stood there."
And what's
And
up
he
with having a sister that, would be think it's okay to scratch your wife? And,
Mhm.
I mean, like,
Yeah,
that is so
yeah,
it's so
and
Thursday
later
night soap opera, you know?
yeah, yeah, and, I it's funny because I always thought his family had everything together. They, on the surface, were like this wear lifestyles of the rich and famous. They wore name brand clothing. They had to drive the finest cars, and they were, like, so quiet and, they were fun people, but they were, also very, like, yes, we don't I can't put the
Yeah, they
my
were
finger
trying to appear proper.
Yes, and I'm loud and obnoxious, I'm like I say I'm socially unacceptable because I'm just like, I'm just me. I'm
Yeah,
just who I am, and I don't put on pretenses.
you're actually
But
authentic.
yes,
Yay.
yes, and as time went on, I realized they were the ones with the problem, not me. They had the issues. They were the ones who had extreme dysfunction, and they could talk about each other in that family. They would just bash each other, but if you said anything, oh, no, you could as the in-laws, you could not say anything, and, um but mine and my husband's house was where everybody came because we were kinda in the middle between family in this state and family in that state, and so everyone would come to our house, and, we were the ones who dealt with everything. My husband and I were the ones who dealt with all the family stuff, but, yeah, that's a whole other, thing, but looking at it now, I realize they're all very they have extreme, uh, avoidant personalities. They will not address each other on anything. Um, and here's another interesting thing that drove my husband crazy. His sister right before him and her husband were married, like, they've probably been married close to 50 years now, but she hates him. They live together, but she hates him. I mean, she was just like, "If I could leave him, I would leave him." And it just drove my husband crazy because he looked at her husband, his sister's husband, as almost like a father figure, and he was just like, "I love him so much. I don't know why she treats him like that. It's so sad to watch her how she treats him." And I mentioned that to him at one point. I said, "You're you do not like the way your sister and her husband's relationship is, m but you're telling me you don't love me. How are we gonna make this work?" He goes, "Oh, we're not. I will not stay in a relationship like that. I will never stay in that kind of relationship." I'm like, "Okay." So, yes, but, um, it was May 31st, I came home and he was gone. He had taken our travel trailer, our desktop computers, um, all of our financial paperwork, our safe, and he was gone.
So
He took
you
no
went
clothes.
wow. He
Yeah,
just took those
yeah, I had been, at a garage sale. I was having a garage sale with my family, and I came home and he was gone, and there was a note on my car. There was a note that said, "I'm taking a trip. I'm gonna go see my family, and I'm taking a trip. I don't know when I'll return. I'll contact you periodically," and that was it, and he's just signed his name. He didn't say, "I love you." It was just very like, I'm just an acquaintance. Even his text messages to me were just like, I hope you're having a good day. Um, I need to ask you this. It was never used my name. Um, never said I love you. Just this is very like I was just an acquaintance. Um, and so yeah, May 31st, I came home and he was gone. I had the
Did your
note.
stomach just drop to the ground when you read that
Uh,
letter?
yeah, I think I probably almost blacked out. I was just like,
Yeah,
"What?" This I cannot believe this is happening.
right.
Um, I didn't try to contact him. I didn't call him. I didn't text him. I just was like, "Let him go. He's gotta do this." And my family came over and they were just like, we're calling his family right now. We're gonna have a conversation speakerphone." His sisters wouldn't answer to me, but his niece and her husband did. And this was a niece that he didn't have a real good relationship with. But, we talked to them like, "We're scared, we don't know what's happening." And they were like, "Yeah, he's coming here, he's gonna come here, and we're gonna eat with him tonight." And, so I contacted him a couple of days later and asked, how he was doing, and they said, "Oh, he's gone. He said he was going up north, like, we don't know where he's at." And I'm like, "Do you guys understand why I'm so panicked?" Like, and they're like, "Well," it was kinda like they were just making light of it, like, he just wants to take a trip. And I said, "He's never taken a trip without me, ever. And it's okay for your husband to just leave and not tell you where he's going? Like, that's who does that?" So I was then worried, like, is he gonna continue to pay the bills? By this time, he's getting his pension from the fire department and stuff. But, I probably make $700 a month working. And I'm like, I can't afford to pay the utilities. Our house was like 3,000 square feet. We have 5 acres. I'm got to figure out how to operate a tractor. I mean, I knew how to mow our yard with our rider. I knew how to weed eat and stuff, but we had heavy rains and it washed out our drive, and I had to figure out how to use the tractor to get our drive in order. And I wouldn't call him. I just wouldn't call him and ask him anything. There was one point where I had to ask him for some money for some repairs that I just didn't have the money, and he had blocked me. I was blocked from his phone, so I had to email him. And so I emailed him, and he did respond. And then all of a sudden on June 17th of 2024, he just shows up. I mean, just out of nowhere, he's just back at the house. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, he's here." Our travel trailer wasn't back. I asked him, I said, "Oh, where's the travel trailer?" And he was like, "It's parked somewhere." I said, "So you're not staying?" And he goes, "We'll see." Like, okay. So I didn't really talk to him a whole lot. I just kind of let him be. And then within a couple of hours, I heard his truck start up and he's driving down the driveway. And I text him and I'm like, "So you're not staying?" And his response was, "That is correct. I will speak to you tomorrow afternoon." Very formal, like I just, no explanation. Then the next day I was swimming, I just like, I'm going to just, I went out, I was just like blasting my music. And I'm like, I just, like, I've got to feel good. I've got to feel good. This depression, this dark hole I'm in, I have to save myself. So I was like, I'm going to go swimming. I'm going to lay out. I'm going to listen to my music. Well, all of a sudden, there's his truck pulling up. And I didn't get out of the pool right then because I was just like, I'm not going to act excited. I'm not going to put pressure on him. I'm just going to be, like, "Oh, hey." And so we have a restroom in our garage. And I said, I had got out of the pool about 45 minutes later and he was coming out of the restroom in the garage. And I have on a very skimpy swimming suit that he always liked, didn't even acknowledge it. Never even like I was just not even there. And so I said, "Hey, what you doing?" He goes, "I'm unloading my stuff." And I go, "Oh, you're gonna stay?" And he goes, "Yeah." Oh man, I was so excited. I was so happy he was staying. I was just like, "Oh yes, he's staying." But he was still not my husband. He was so weird, just that trance. He had lost so much weight. He looked so old. I have two pictures, one of him on May 20 or March 24th and one March 30th. And he looks like a different person. He aged probably 10 years in those two pictures. And in between that was when he just flipped on me. So looking at him when he was at the house, I was just like, wow, he looks so bad. He just looks so bad. And I said, well, I'm going to cook dinner. Would you like me to cook dinner for you too? And he goes, no, no, I'm just going to go lay down. I said, I don't know. You better let me cook you some dinner. We need to put some weight on you. You lost too much weight. And he was a big guy. He's like 6'1". He's, super muscular, but he just was skin and bone. He just looked awful. And I mean, you just saw depression full force. Just that depression was palatable. It was cut it with a knife so thick. Um, and then I came home. I had to go somewhere that evening. When I came home, he was gone again. And I realized I was still staying in our guest room. He had come in the room I was staying in, went through all my stuff and took out some cards he had given me that I had. He took those cards. He took the most random stuff. He took all of his firefighter memorabilia. He took all of his helmets that he had wore through the ranks. He took all of his collar brass he wore through the ranks. And this was all stuff we had hanging up. We had a big game room, and it was all hanging up in that game room. All of his bunker gear, he'd taken it, all of it. But he didn't take any clothes. All of his clothes were still hanging in the closet. They're still there. I was just like, this is so weird. Why take all this stuff, but you don't take your clothes, you know? So I text him. I, I can't remember if I texted him then or not. But then on June 20th, I was working and my cameras were going off. I couldn't see my cameras. It was just dinging me that somebody was there. And so I called my neighbor and I said, can you tell me if somebody's down at my house? And she goes, yeah, your husband's down there. He's hooking up to a trailer. So I drive home because I wasn't working very far from home. And when I pull down the road we lived on, he's coming towards me and he's got a 20-foot flatbed trailer on the back of his truck with his Jeep on the back of his truck. And I stop him. I'm like, hey, where are you going with the Jeep? I'm just like being just light. And he was like, I'm taking it to have it repaired. Never looks at me, just straight forward looking. And I said, well, can I ask you a question? I'm like, what are we doing? Are we separated? Are we going to work on things? And he was, never looks at me, straight ahead. I left you a note on the bar. I go home. Yep, he left a note. He was going to file for divorce. And I was just like, about passed out. I was just like, what? How can he do this? How can he? What have I done? And that's the last time I ever spoke to him verbally. Never spoke to him verbally since. Yeah. Only communication was via text message, and it was very few and far between. And on July 17th, our anniversary, 29th wedding anniversary, was July 15th. July 17th, I got a text from him telling me that I would be receiving some legal paperwork for my consideration and my email. And when I got the paperwork, he had filed for divorce on our 29th wedding anniversary. I was like, wow, wow. He has lost his mind. And divorce is not something we believe in unless adultery is committed. And your marriage is forever. You work it out. You do not, that's our religious thinking. And that was something he believed in wholeheartedly. This was not an afterthought for us. This was something we wholeheartedly believed in. And so, yeah, he offered me in the divorce petition $50,000, my car, and most of the belongings in the house. Now we have a 40 by 60 shop that's full of tools and tractors and lawn equipment and sound equipment. He was going to take all of that, take what he wanted from the house, and I could have, you know, what was in the house. He wanted some TVs. He wanted a recliner. He wanted his office stuff and one of the bedrooms of furniture. Um, and that was it. That's all he offered me. And I'm like, no, I get half your pension, half your retirement, half the equity in this house because this house will have to be sold. He wanted to keep the house. And I was just like, there's no way that's going to work. I'm entitled. I've spent over half my life in this marriage working just like you have to make, a life. And my family was just like, you're going to have to get tough, because I was so, before that, I was just like, he's not okay. He's not okay. He's had a mental breakdown. He's just, please don't be mad at him. Don't be mean to him. Just, that's just how I was about it. And then, in October, I got served paperwork. He was trying to have me evicted from the house, because our nothing moved forward on the divorce. Once I got the paperwork and then I got me an attorney, nothing moved forward with the divorce. I just kept like, when is something going to take place? And as far as I was concerned, I wasn't gonna push for it. I'm just like, status quo was fine with me. I'm gonna stay I'm staying put. And he sent me a text and said, "Can you tell me where we are on the offer that I've sent you through my attorney?" I said, um, "The fact that I lawyered up is your answer. But anything you need to know, you should find out from your attorney, you know, but that's what you're paying her for." And so then we went to court in October. On the 24th of October, he was trying to have me evicted. He was like, "I can't afford to pay for her place and me a place, and she can afford to stay on her." He was like, he didn't wanna pay me alimony or anything. I mean, he becomes such a hard-hearted person. He was never that way. Ever, ever was he this kind of person. Yeah, just wipe his hands on me and be done. Give me a lump sum of $50,000 and she'll be good. And it so when we went to court, the judge didn't even hear our case. She said, "No." My attorney, I guess, had spoke to her and my husband's attorney and said, "This girl makes $700 a month." He left her, and she's been the one there taking care of everything, and he's been paying for everything. Why can't he continue that? And the judge said, "That's the way it's gonna stay." So I got to stay in the house, and then he was court ordered that he could come to the house and start getting his belongings. He said I wouldn't let him come to the house. I had locked him out. That was not true. That was absolutely not true. Um, I did ask him to let me know if he was gonna come to the house because that was my safe zone, was the house. You just blew my life up, and I don't know who you are, and I'm not secure anymore. Like, I have trust issues, and, you need to let me know when you're gonna come to the house and not just show up because it freaks me out. He scared me because he was such a different person. I was just like, I don't know what's gonna happen, He's just so weird. But, so he started getting to come to the house on Wednesdays starting in October. He started getting to come to the house on Wednesdays. I had to leave. As soon as he would get there, he would disconnect the cameras and leave the cameras disconnected until he left. And then he would connect the cameras back and I would see him driving off down the road. And yeah, so then we went to mediation, probably like November 10th. I think we went to mediation. No, probably like it's on a Thursday. So it's probably like November 8th, I think. We went to mediation and it was so surreal. I was just like, I cannot believe this is happening. But yeah, so went through that and I got half of everything. We had to put the house up for sale. I got half the equity in the house. I got half of his pension, half of his retirement. Um, all the stuff we had to sell off from our house. I got half of everything. Our divorce was final. Well, his divorce was final November 12th of last year. And then our house sold. This is how he was too. He wanted to sell our house to put our house on the market for $400,000. And I was just like, "No, our house is worth at least 600,000. No." And our realtor that we had was a court-appointed realtor, neutral party, and, she was like, "Well, I really think, he just wants to make a quick sell." And I'm like, "Well, sure he does. He just wants to blow up our life." And I said, "We've worked hard for everything we have, and this is my life. What I get off this house is gonna mean me being able to buy me another house, and so I'm fighting for this one." And yeah, our house sold for $600,000. And he had to pay me uh, an extra $40,000 in lieu of alimony. So I was able to buy me a house outright. I moved in December, and I am still processing. I'm still in therapy, still working through my feelings, hoping he'll come back, but knowing he won't is hard. It's hard, but I know there's life after him. My mom keeps telling me he does not define you. Your identity is not tied up in him. You are who you are without him. And that's hard. It really is hard to think about a life without him. But I've done it for over a year and I've survived. I have proven to myself that I can do this. Um, all of our friends are just like, you are one strong person. You are so strong. I don't feel like it, but as sad as it is, it it is what it is. You can't change it. And I do feel for him. I feel like he's not okay. He's not happy. He's miserable, and he's going to regret what he did to me. I feel
Well,
like,
he took a match to his life.
yeah. Oh, yeah. He took a bomb to his life. He just imploded everything. And I would tell my family, he couldn't care less if I was in ICU on life support. He would not come to see me. He couldn't care less. And they're like, no, no, that's not. There was a tornado who came through our area November 3rd of last year. It missed us, our old house, by less than a mile. Nothing. I never heard a word from him, never checked on me, you
Well,
know?
he's not himself. He's not the man you were married to.
No, no. But interestingly enough, I was engaged to somebody almost 40 years ago. Um, I was probably 36, 37 years ago. I was engaged to somebody and I broke it off with him. And he got married and married a lady, was married for 32 years. And his wife died almost 3 years ago. And just randomly, he reached out to me on Facebook and he was like, "Hey, how are you?" And I was like, "Oh, so good to hear from you. Just I've wondered about you since your wife died, how you're doing." And, he's like, "I'm still in the healing process. I'm struggling still. It's like I'm going through all the stages of what you go through with grief." And he was like, "How are you and your husband doing?" And I was like, "Oh, it's funny you asked that." I said, "He left me." And he was like, "No." I mean, he just was blown away that he was like, "You guys were like the couple. Everybody talked about you guys and like you guys were like Ken and Barbie. That's what they called you. Like you guys were the perfect couple." And I'm like, "Well, apparently not." I said he divorced me in November. And so strangely enough, him and I are seeing each other. We've been talking and um I'm not ready for a relationship yet. But he would be the one. He's such a sweetheart of a guy. I told him, I'm like, I should have married you. I should have married you, but I was too young and immature. But I have hope. I do have happiness. I am happy. I'm not happy like I used to be, but I am happy. And you can get through this. When you go through this, it is the hardest thing I have ever experienced in my life. But to see how I've changed, how I've learned things about myself, what I thought I could never accomplish on my own, then I'm doing it. I'm doing it. And you don't need another person in your life. You can be happy and content by yourself. Um, and that you do have value. Just because you're thrown away like a piece of trash, because that's what I tell everybody. I feel like I was thrown away like a piece of trash. I still
Absolutely.
yeah, live in my own house and I do things my own way. And I've learned a lot from my ex-husband. I learned a lot as far as how to make things because he was always like a hands-on. He could do everything. I have put in light fixtures, faucets, done plumbing, made stuff, hung stuff. you know, I've figured it all out. I'm figuring it out. And it makes me proud of myself. I'm like, "I can do this," and when people say, that I'm an example, they're like, "You're such an example. You're such a strong person, and, you never one time bashed your ex-husband," and I haven't. I haven't. I'm like, "Then why would I bash him? He's not who he was. He's that person died. That person that I was married to died." And
And
you
now I
definitely go
guess that you believe in midlife crisis?
I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a real thing, yeah. And there's
It's a
still people
real
who will
thing. Isn't that
yeah,
crazy?
yeah. There's people who will tell me, "Well, I don't know what it is. I don't know what happened to him." I'm like, "I don't need you to know what it is. I know.
Yep.
I know what it is." If this was your mate and this happened to you, you would be looking into all the resources that there are out there.
Mhm.
I mean, I've spent money that I didn't have on courses with Larry Bellata and the wife expert. I'm just like, I've got to get some sense to what's going on here. And those helped me a lot. They did. They helped me a lot. But well, I guess I have what's called a vanisher. Like my ex-husband's just gone and, no
Mine's a
context.
finisher too. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. But in a way, those who have ones who are at home, I don't know how they do it. I don't. Yeah. That was the most torturous experience of my life. And to wonder where he's been and if he's okay is hard. But to be able to have my peace in my home and not to walk on eggshells and to have that constant stress. And I'm not a medication person. I'm like one of these people, I'm like, Suck it up, buttercup, you can do it." But I got on medication. I cannot do this. I've got to get on some medication. And I stayed on it for about a year. Just recently, I got off, and I've struggled a bit more with my emotions since I've got off, but they're much more manageable now, and I think it's just, as time goes, you just heal a little bit more. There's always gonna be that scar. There's always gonna be that wound that's not completely scarred over. There's always gonna be that. So, I don't know how you ever get that completely healed. So and it does cause you to question people. When you're blindsided by the person you felt was your rock, and they were rock solid, the most trustworthy person, the most loyal. I mean, there's not enough adjectives out there to describe my ex-husband, how awesome he was. If you lived here and you met people that knew my husband and the shock that people have about what's happened, they're just in shock. They still, when they see me, are just like, we still are just trying to process. We do not know how you're even going. I'm like, yeah, well, I have a good support system. I have an amazing support system, and that's helped me tremendously. So I, that's my story. That's my nightmare.
It is a nightmare. Yes, I know. There's so many similarities in your nightmare with all of us.
Yeah.
My husband too left all his clothes. They're still here. Sneakers are still outside. I just left them
Wow.
there. All his tools, his golf clubs,
Yeah.
family photos, letters from his dad who passed away years ago. It's like crazy. They just
Yeah.
boom, leave 'em. And these are usually sentimental men that, appreciate all that stuff. But,
Yeah.
there were some questions I wanted to ask you there. Like, in the beginning, you mentioned oh, I was wondering what prevented you from dating him when he came back into town, early, early in your youth?
It was funny. I never really wanted to get married. Um, I was never one just to like date casually. I'm just, I don't know. I'm a different person. I'm me. I'm my own person, and I'm like, I don't never felt like I needed to have a man around to. I don't know. And I think
Because
I
you
was
were
probably
independent.
yeah. And I think I was just kind of too young because I was 17, and I was like I was too young to really make a decision to say, yeah, I want to. I don't like to hurt people. I don't want to hurt people. And so I'm like, if like he might want this to go somewhere serious, and I'm not there. That's not me. And I don't want to, think I'm having a platonic relationship and it's their emotions are getting involved in and me hurt them. I just didn't want to do that. So and then I ended up doing that to the guy I was engaged to. I got engaged to this I did it to him. I was like, Yeah.
And later on, after you guys, I think either you were dating or when you were married, you mentioned that you would sort of push his buttons on purpose, you know? Do you know why you did that?
Um, you know what? It's my childhood issues. I think it was my way of testing, and I had been married once before, and so I think it was my way of just kinda testing to see how loyal he was gonna be, how much love he had. I don't know. That's what I feel like, is that it was my way of testing just really how loyal he was gonna be, because I had a tumultuous childhood myself. My parents are still married, though. They're 60 years in, they're still married. But my dad was a mess, and so I think just the insecurities I had from that, and then my first marriage, the insecurities from that, I think it was just like I had anger and some rage about all of that, um, and then I was just like, "I'm gonna test the waters here. Let's just see if he's true blue," and he was. He was so true blue. Yeah. He was rock solid through all of my cuckoo craziness.
Aw. Okay, I'm just gonna scan over some of my stuff here. Questions. How did you like in mid-May? You had hit the emotional abuse really hit you, and
Yeah.
you mentioned it was like probably hard to get out of bed, feeling
Mhm.
almost suicidal, like is life how do I go on kind of feeling.
Yeah. Mhm.
How did what made the difference then in the middle of May when that was all hitting you psychologically, mentally?
Uh, well, I went to stay with my parents for a while. I'm like, I gotta get out of here. I gotta go stay with my parents. And so I went with them and stayed there. And I mean, it was bad there. It was like they were so worried about me because I could hardly function. I couldn't. I got up and I was crying. I cried the whole day, and I was just like a walking zombie and so depressed. And my family was just so depressed. Um, But the support, just people telling me, "This is not you." When you hear the things your husband says about you and what kind of person you are, it makes you question everything about you. You're like, "I've been this kind of person all my life, and I didn't know that?" And my younger sister made a statement. She said, "You know what? You guys can choose to believe what you want to about what he's saying about her. I choose to believe one way or another he's a liar. He's either lied for the past 29 years about how he felt about her and that she was the best thing since sliced bread in his eyes, or he's lying now, and I believe he's lying now." And so the rest of my family were like, "Yeah, we they know I'm a high-strung, hot-tempered person, but they saw us, my husband and I, how we worked together on everything, how I supported him. I mean, I worked like a man side by side with him." And they were like, they never yeah, they argued and stuff, but I wasn't the kind of person that he said I was. And so to have support for people telling me, "You are not that kind of person. You have value. There will be life after him." I didn't want to hear that at the time, but it did help me, to just gain some perspective and some balance. And
Well,
medication. Medication
and
helped.
now yeah, and now you can look back and you realize he was, what do they call it? Rewriting the script,
Yes.
rewriting history, and he was really setting you up to be the villain.
Yes.
Like, clearly, when you called out to his parents for, you know, to talk to them, and they were like, "Well, it sounded like, yeah, he's leaving his abuser," you
Yeah.
know,
Mhm.
and and that is just and they do that. It takes
Mhm.
they really work on that for,
Oh, yeah.
I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah, he
years almost.
he yeah, in one of the letters that he sent me, he was like in the one of the notes that he had left on the bar about divorce, that there have although there have been some good years, the majority of our marriage has been violence, threats of violence, manipulation, lies, you know, just outright disrespect, all the stuff he said about me. And I was like,
Yeah,
"Okay." Like, "I'm living a different life than you're living.
yeah,
That's not the life that I thought we had." You know?
right.
Eh, all the cards when I looked back through, I kept everything. Every single card he gave me was, "You are the best thing that's ever happened to me. I do not know what I would do without you. You complete me," all those things.
Yep,
And now I'm the villain.
Right. I know. I have those cards too,
Yeah.
I should wallpaper it somewhere. It's
Yeah.
so crazy. It's like, yeah, what's up with but yeah, it's a mental shift that they go through, and
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
heartbreaking to see,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, because you obviously saw him struggling, knowing, you know I think one of our guests described it. It was actually a woman in midlife crisis, and she described it as the good angel and the devil, like,
Yeah.
good on one shoulder, devil on the other, and it's a battle in your head. So,
Yeah.
and do you know, whatever happened with, that couple that you guys were mentoring?
Mhm. They're still in my place of worship. I see them regularly. To my knowledge, they still have dealings with my ex-husband. Um, they don't come out and tell people that, but there's been instances where once I've seen them with him, and I don't even know if he's, like, living in the state that I live in anymore. I think that he comes back here from time to time. Um, and, here's something that's interesting too. I was able to access his checking account for a while,
Mhm.
and he was spending over $8,000 a month on a credit card. And that started happening early on when he flipped on me. I started monitoring our checking account, and we had 2 checking accounts. Actually, we had 3, and one of them I wasn't a signer on, and that one I, by hook or crook, figured out how to access it, and that's where I was seeing that he how much money he was spending, and he was taking money out of his, retirement account. He took, like, $70,000 out of the retirement account. Um, he was taking, uh spending, like I said, upwards of $8,000 on a credit card, and his pension wasn't even that. So he was out spending more than he was coming home with, you know? So wild how they just and he set himself up so well for retirement. We were set
Right.
with his retirement,
Yep.
and he lost half of everything. He lost half of everything, and I gained I would much rather have him in my life, but, the money doesn't matter to me. I would much rather have him. But,
The
my
healthy version.
yes, yes, and my mom was mad at me. She was like, because of the houses I was looking at, I'm like, "This is what I want," and I wanted a 3rd car garage because I have a gym, I have a home gym. Working out for me is sanity,
Yep.
it's like it's and my mom's like, "Well, I think the queen is gonna have to lower her standards to a princess," like that. I said, "Well, if I can afford it, I can afford it," and I said, "Look at it this way, he's paying for it all because what I'm getting from him is what is paying for everything. So I'm debt free. I have a home debt free, you know. I mean, yes, I have utilities and reoccurring expenses, but I'm debt free. I don't even have to work if I don't want to. It's all because he made that choice.
Mhm. Well, Sarah, it looks like you've gone through the storm, through the nightmare, and, things are looking bright, so that's good.
I hope so. I hope so.
And I love that you've, described it all this way, and, so folks that are going through it in the earlier stages than you, and really, this is pretty fresh still for you. I mean, this
Yeah.
was
Hmm. It is.
barely a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. It's March 27th is when it all started. March 27th of 2024. So yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
I,
And it's funny, you said some things there, like the word disrespect. I remember other affair partners using that with in these whole scenarios, and you just laugh to yourself because you
oh
think, "Really, you're using the word
yeah.
respect and disrespect?" Um, that's crazy. And you know what? I noticed that there were some things you had pointed out, and I thought, "Girl, it was your intuition," you know? You had you when you listened to your intuition, it really
Yes.
helped,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah, people would
Okay.
tell me when I would say certain things were gonna happen, they were like, You don't know that." And I'm like, "I I just feel it. I just feel like this is going to happen." And everything I said was gonna happen. Everything.
Mhm.
Like, he's gonna leave me. I'm gonna come home and he's gonna be gone. He's gonna divorce me. Um, you know, just there's so many things I said and they all happened. But you just
Since
have
this
that gut feeling about it.
right, right. And since you know what, I remember hearing, my ex when he was, on the phone, the first time with his what became his affair partner. This I came in the kitchen and he's like, "Oh, honey, come here. So and so's on the phone. I want you to meet her." The hair on my arms went up for no reason. It's really odd. That's like something that would normally never happen. But
Yeah.
you
Mhm.
know, my body knew. Isn't
Yeah.
that crazy?
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. And
And
just
there is that book, Your Body Knows. And you know,
yes.
let me grab this book, I wanna mention to you, what is it? Uh, oh, have you heard of, ambiguous grief?
No, I haven't.
So, this book's Soul Broken. It's by Stephanie Sarrazin. It's, for your journey through ambiguous grief. Haven't started reading it yet, but ambiguous grief is exactly a midlife crisis situation where
Mhm.
that person, is still alive, but the person you knew is dead,
Yeah. Mhm.
and you're grieving the person you lost.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I'll have to get that and read that. Yeah.
um,
I tell people all the time, no one tells you how hard it is to grieve a person who's still alive, and, you it's so hard, and people will be like, "Well, oh, I understand, I've been through a divorce." I'm like, "You don't understand.
it's
No.
not a normal divorce at all.
No, it is not the same." My younger sister's been through a divorce as well, and I'm like, "I've been through a divorce," and they're totally different.
Mhm.
It's so mind-blowingly different,
Yeah,
and I tell people, trying to explain how this feels is like trying to describe the color blue to a blind person, and you just can't do it. You
that's right.
cannot do it, you know? And I appreciate people's well-meaning "Oh, I understand. Yeah, I've been there." No, you haven't. You haven't.
Yeah,
And
and
you
God
can't
haven't, you
yeah,
know?
I know. Yeah, and, you know, people will like my younger sister, she was like, "Well, my husband, when we divorced, maybe he was having a midlife crisis." I'm like, "No, your husband was just always a jerk. He was just always a jerk." He was cheating on her from the word go.
Oh,
Like, that was not my husband, that was not my husband. He was rock solid, just like I say, he
well,
was never
obviously, when you guys were involved in church and he probably,
yeah,
looked down or, he couldn't even accept, I'm sure, people who were being unfaithful.
no,
So
no,
it's probably
mm-mm,
against his
no,
moral
yeah.
compass.
And he has, really, compromised his own standards, his own morality. He's compromised all of that, and I feel like he will never be able to humble himself enough to deal with the aftermath of everything that the carnage he's left behind, and the fact that he will never have that reputation again. He will never have that reputation that he's had
Right,
prior to this. He'll never have that. It's gone.
right. It is
There's
gone.
always gonna be the before him and the after him, I hear
Yep,
people come out when they come out of it that they're better people, um, but I don't feel like my husband's such an arrogant that's one thing, he's the most awesome person, but he's a very arrogant person, um, and I just don't feel like he can own up to the damage and the loss of his reputation. I don't feel like I'll ever be able to handle that,
mhm.
so
Since you've gone through this, have you met other men or women with spouses going through a midlife crisis? And if so, how have you been able to, talk to them, help them, stuff like that?
yeah, so funny enough, the lady I use as my realtor to buy my house, her husband did the same thing to her. They were married 18 years, and, he just walked off and left her, moved to California, and then she followed him to California, and then she said, "I just felt like I was like this 3rd wheel." He was living with another couple, and she found out, he'd been unfaithful to her, and she was, like, trying her best to stick it out, but he finally told her, "I don't want you around. I don't want you," and he died just recently, but she said, "I never wanted to get remarried after that." She was like, My trust issues that I had, it just wasn't worth it." I just was like, "I'm not ever gonna get remarried," and they never spoke. Him and her never spoke, and that happened, boy, I can't remember how long ago that happened. I remember hearing about it because we just kind of our religious organization is like a close and she was in my religious organization, but, and so was her husband. But then and I've also had people, when they hear my circumstances, they'll be like, "Oh my god, like, so and so's dad just died, and they left their wife, and they married this other woman, and then, like, 3 years later, he was like, 'What the world am I doing? I don't wanna be married to this woman. I want my first wife,'" you know? And, like, describe similar circumstances, that they become a different person and they just like, "I don't love you anymore." Just like, it's so bizarre, but it's a real thing. People who doubt it and who have never been through it, hey, good for you, but it's real. It is real, and it's the most damaging thing you can ever go through.
It is. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
yeah.
collateral damage is just
Oh, yeah,
unbelievable.
yeah. Mhm.
And it's heartbreaking for everybody, for the MLCer who
Yeah,
throws their life away or whatever, and, I mean, I just can't imagine living in their brain fog, you know?
me neither. Yeah, yeah,
Just awful,
yeah.
but well, good. I'm glad you shared your story today. We'll check in with you another time, and I'll sign us off for now. So
Okay.
thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Bien, you guys, forward moving spouses, you are not alone. Left behind spouses, you are not alone. Those in crisis, you are certainly not alone. This is just crazy how epidemic this has become. I have a waiting list now of people from around the world that I'm trying to get to. And if you've been through a midlife crisis or been impacted by someone else's and you want to share your story, I'd love to hear from you. Hang in there, you guys. I will get to all of you. Please reach out to me at mlcbombdrop@gmail.com and visit us on Facebook and Instagram, MLC Bomb Drop. Um, and just remember, your voice matters. Your story could be the one that helps someone else feel seen. It could help someone else feel heard. And it will help somebody else feel understood. You are not alone, no matter where you are in your journey. If the bomb was just dropped, the earthquake just happened, if you are 7 or 8 years in and you're coming out of starting to wake up and awaken to this, um, you are not alone. It's sad that this is epidemic, but we're here to provide support. So until next time, take care and live authentically each and every day. Thanks again, you guys.